The rest of the, or what's led up till now is not unanswered. It's obvious to the audience members that we do not get along and have no fun in this commission. But good evening, everyone, and welcome to Grande Prairie's public hearing of the Election Boundary Commission. First of all, thank you for coming this evening when we know there's conflicting demands on all of us. My name, by way of introduction, my name is Justice Alice Miller. I'm the chairman of the commission, excuse me, and I also serve as a justice of the Court of King's Bench in southern Alberta, way down south, Lethbridge and Medicine Hat. Other commissioners are, to my left, Susan Sampson, a longtime resident of Sylvan Lake, and an experienced municipal politician who has served terms as councillor and mayor of Sylvan Lake, and operated a private business with her husband for years. She's also the recipient of the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal for her volunteer activity and has been named a Citizen of the Year in Sylvan Lake. To her left is John Evans KC, a lawyer with a province-wide firm known as Stringham. He works primarily out of the Lethbridge office and conducts trials across the province, and his legal ability has been recognized by being awarded the King's Counsel designation, or KC. John also does some trials, I believe, up in this territory as well. John also volunteers as a member of the Alberta Judicial Nominating Committee. To my right is Dr. Julian Martin, who's a retired history professor from the University of Alberta with advanced degrees from Cambridge University. Julian has volunteered on many committees in Sherwood Park and Edmonton area throughout his career, and has also served on provincial quasi-judicial tribunals such as the Surface Rights Board and Land Compensation Board. At the end of the table is Mr. Greg Clark, an entrepreneur and consultant focusing on information and knowledge management. Greg hails from Calgary, and he has the experience of being a member of the legislature for Calgary Elbow for one term. He too is recipient of the Queen Elizabeth II Platinum Jubilee Medal and serves as chairman of the Balancing Pool of Alberta and consults and advises organizations widely relative to proper board governance. We are your elected, no, we're not elected. We are your Electoral Boundaries Commission for Alberta, and I would like to just go through a bit more of an introduction in terms of our task ahead. And the legislation that governs our operation as a commission has been amended to provide for 89 electoral divisions rather than 87. So that is one big factor we must take into account in our work. To give individuals some perspective as to what is before us, the timeline is helpful. As a commission, we were established by the Speaker of the Legislature in late March of this year. We met a couple of times in April to discuss process and the program and the schedule, and we commenced public hearings in late May, and we've been going full strength in terms of touring the province since late May, and we will work this week and continue on Monday next week with our final day of virtual hearings. We have been to many communities crisscrossing across the province, and this week we're dedicating to northern Alberta. We were in Peace River this morning, and we will be in Slave Lake tomorrow, and Hinton, and then to Red Deer. Once we complete our public hearings, which will be next Monday, we begin deliberations as a commission. We'll be meeting for a couple or 3 days next week to discuss proposals for the new boundaries, and we will be meeting no doubt throughout summer, and eventually we will come up with an interim report. I shouldn't say eventually. We will come up with an interim report, and that will be registered and filed with the Speaker of the Legislature no later than late October of this year. That interim report is then subject to more public hearings and public feedback, and we will receive that throughout November and December, and we will have a final round of public hearings then in January, and that will then lead us up to a final report, which will be filed with the Speaker of the Legislature in late March. As everyone in the audience knows, each constituency or electoral division or riding, all those terms are used interchangeably, elects one member of the Legislative Assembly. Voters in that division or riding do the voting for that member. To give some perspective on what our task is, it's helpful to look back at the previous Electoral Boundaries Commission, which was provided their final report in 2017. Only 8 years ago, but the world has changed a lot. Alberta has changed a lot over that time, and the contrast is helpful to illustrate the task that we have. In 2017, the Electoral Boundaries Commission at that time had a population of Alberta of 4,062,609 people. That was averaged out over 87 ridings, came up with a mean average of 46,697. That's not the target number for each electoral division. The target number is a range of anywhere from -25 of that number to +25, and those figures are before you at 35,023 and 58,371. Our situation this time round is a vastly increased population. The population that we will be relying on is 4,888,723 Albertans. Plus, we have the 89 electoral divisions to deal with. The mean average then results in 54,929. Again, the target population is that range of -25 of 41,197 and up to 68,661. Biggest factor, in addition to the change of electoral divisions, is the huge population increase. That growth has not been spread evenly across the province. So our task is to fashion and construct electoral boundaries that, after we hear from Albertans, such that we can come up with effective representation across the province. That's the principle that we'll be relying on, not one person, one vote. We are not part of the American system. That is an American feature, not part of Canadian law, electoral law. When we work through our report, or when we come up with our report, we'll be working through several principles that are included in the legislation as guides for us. We will be dealing with the relative sparsity and density of population across the province. We will be dealing with issues such as community interest in each electoral division. Boundaries will be looked at or determined to some extent by geographic features. That's prominently in the rural areas, and when I say rural, outside of Calgary and Edmonton, that's a very rough definition of rural. Also, communication lines and transportation routes will serve as potential boundaries. Our task ultimately is to come up with understandable and clear boundaries for Alberta and for Albertans. Finally, we will take into account other appropriate and important factors that we as a commission deem relevant. That's a catch-all phrase that will encompass any interesting or informative or very helpful information we receive through the public hearing process. So that, by way of background, is the Alberta Electoral Boundaries Commission, our mandate, and our schedule. In view of that, we are here for Grande Prairie, and our first presenter will be Mr. Bob Marshall. So please come forward, have a seat. We've got obviously lots of time, and we want to hear from you. Please identify yourself, where you live, and proceed with your presentation. once you've completed your presentation, we will no doubt have questions and carry on a dialogue based on what you've told us.
Oh, thank you for allowing me to speak. I have actually met Greg Clark before. When he was leader of the Alberta Party, he came up here to speak to municipalities. I am the Reeve for the county of Grande Prairie. I live just outside of Grande Prairie to the west of Wembley on an acreage. So with your presentation, I do have some concerns around some of the guidelines that you are, the criteria, and mainly it's around population. We saw that the last time, and it seemed like it was primarily driven around population. When you look out, and historically, and I'm probably get called on this from our history professor here, but 100 years ago, the population was primarily 80% rural and 20% urban because we're an agrarian society. Things have changed a lot in those 100 years, and now it's flipped, and it's 80 or even more on the urban side, and it seems like with the immigration that we're experiencing, it's heavily populating into those larger centers. Some of the issues, the other one I'd like to highlight is effective representation. I would challenge the thought that an MLA in Calgary, their constituents, even though there's a higher density of population, their constituents, they can be 15 minutes and walk to their MLA's office. Where if I look in the north, if you look at the NADC area, which is Northern Alberta Development Council, we're 60% of the province's landmass. We're only about 10% of the population. But the resources that come out of the north that feed the provincial revenue base, from oil and gas to agriculture. In the northwest here, there's more agricultural land in the northwest than there is in all of Manitoba. So from an agrarian base, oil and gas, forestry, and even tourism, how many of you have heard of Big Sam? Any of you heard of Big Sam? The 1,000-pound Pachyrhinosaurus skull, 72 million years old, that we excavated last fall. And we streamed it live. There's 1 in 25 households in Canada that saw it in one of the news feeds, and 1 in 50 in Britain. So again, from a tourism aspect, we have huge potential up here as well. And when you look at, again, some of our MLAs, it takes 5 hours to drive to their constituency office to see them, versus being able to walk 15 minutes to see your MLA. So effective representation is more than just population. It's also how can you engage with your community, and it's also how do you represent the resources that your region is bringing to the province from a resource revenue. Some of the other concerns is an MLA in Edmonton or Calgary, they have one city council to deal with. Our MLA that represents our region has Wembley, the town of Wembley City Council, the town of Beaver Lodge, the city of Grande Prairie, part of it, because that's split. County of Grande Prairie, the MD of Greenview, there's 5 just for our MLA, plus ag societies and different community groups. Again, in large centers, you have one community group probably within your organization, where we have multiple ag societies, multiple community groups that your MLA in our region has to, or in the north or in any rural area, has to represent. The challenge is much greater for a rural MLA to have effective representation than it is in the larger centers. Population is an important aspect of it. My concern is those numbers on the wall when it's so heavily skewed, and are we going to actually have proper representation in the rural areas, and especially in the north. I look at the last time, I look at Minister Lowen's riding right now. Basically, he's going all the way from Fox Creek all the way up into Clear Hills County. It's a really challenging district that he has to look after, and along a lot of travel with that. So again, 41,000, when you're looking at in the north here, we have maybe 500,000 to 600,000 people total, and that's mainly concentrated around the city. The county of Grande Prairie, we have over 100,000 with the city and everything in it, and the other population base will be Fort McMurray, Wood Buffalo. There's another probably 100,000 based around there, and then the rest of the population is distributed across the north, and that makes it even more challenging. So I really implore you to look at more than just those numbers that are on. They're important. I don't disagree with that, but we really need to have proper representation for those rural areas, especially the resources that come out, so we have the representation there so that we can get the investment back into the region, so that the money that is coming out from royalty revenue and everything else can feed the provincial coffers, and we have the ability to manage them properly for the people that are in the area that are working in those regions versus someone in Ivory Towers sitting in a downtown office building that doesn't know what is going on out in the rural areas and more rural and remote areas. So I would really implore you to look at more than just what is on the board there with those numbers. I think it's important to all of the citizens within the province to look at that and come up with a challenge. I had the same concerns the last time, and it seemed like the last boundary review, there was a number, it was primarily focused on the population. They weren't even willing to listen to anything else that came out. Their focus was, and they're, from my perception, from what I recall, 8 years ago, it was a long time. My memory is not what it once was. But what they were mandated to do by the government at the time was to look primarily at those numbers and come up with a balance of how do you come up with those boundaries. So again, I know even on the thing you look at community, there's other factors, but to me it seems like it's a subset of what you have to do with this. How do you look at this, and then how do you balance everything else within it? I would challenge you to look at effective representation and have this as a piece of it, but also those other factors, because I believe they're key if you want effective representation for all of Albertans within the legislature. So thank you for hearing me. And
okay, I'm going to take the prerogative of the chair and quiz you. Okay, normally I let my fellow commissioners go, but just by way of explanation, effective representation can include several factors. The primary one is population, but it's not the only one. So when we look at the two Grande Prairie ridings, the city, you're at a population of 50,852 now. And Grande Prairie Wapiti is at 53.9, almost 54,000. So you're in the sweet spot there. That's not a problem. But we've been all over. Let me say a couple of things to you. Land doesn't vote.
no,
You talk about distances. How would you like to have 7 different languages represented? None of them are English in your riding. Okay? What do you say to that?
well, I say that we have those same challenges in the north here because some of those immigrants are coming to our region as well. So it's how do we manage the influx and set those immigrants up for success within our region, because we are short of skilled labor for a lot of the jobs that we require. So when we are bringing in these immigrants, whether they're, I'll give you an example. I have rental property in Wembley. 2 years ago, rental property in Wembley. I had a young couple from Ontario. She's a nurse. He's a Red Seal welder. He worked for the, I forget where they were out of again, but he was working for the Coast Guard. He looked for where's the best place to be a welder in Canada, Grande Prairie, Alberta. So they moved here, no jobs set up, 2 young kids, and they were here within 3 days. He had a job lined up as a welder. She had already had a job as a nurse because we were short of those skilled laborers. So that's just within Canada. The next year when they moved out, I had another couple from Quebec phone me looking for a place to stay because the vacancy rate here is less than 1% in our region. And I've had immigrants for the work program that we have around the province to bring in immigrants for allowing that to come in. And you have to pick and choose, but I mean, the amount of people that were applying for a place to rent was incredible. Great to be a landlord, but I mean, challenging when you don't have a place to stay. So again, we have those same challenges, maybe not to the same extent, same volume as what the cities are seeing, but we're still seeing those immigrants come to our region as well. And to the numbers, yes, we're sitting pretty good. But like I said, the two population centers are us and Wood Buffalo in the north. The rest they're going to have a hard time meeting those numbers. And how are you going to have proper representation, especially as it's being driven up by population, the people coming into Calgary primarily, but people are starting to move from Calgary to Red Deer and then up to Edmonton, as well as Calgary is getting flooded. We're trying to get people up here, but again, it's how do we make sure that they're successful? How can we set them up for success so that they can integrate and they can help the economy and be successful in the community versus, I mean, the one documentary I saw on CBC a couple of years ago, the amount of immigration we've had over the last 2 years, more people are leaving out because they're not seeing the success. They're sold a dream, but they're not able to realize that dream, so they're turning around and they're leaving at just about as fast as they're coming in. We've had record immigration, but people aren't being able to see that success that they're being sold. So that's a challenge that we have, and we have an abundance up here. I mean, you're up in Peace River. In my opinion, it's one of the best places to live. It's colder than hell in the winter, but yeah, okay. But we can golf just about 24/7. We're getting close to that day if you want to go out. So there's lots of different things that draw people here. So again, I put it back. Yes, we have that same issue here, maybe to the same extent around languages and stuff. We're all seeing it across the province.
So you've given us some nice handy statistics. 60% of the land mass, 10% of the population. What latitude are you using north for the land mass? Roughly?
I believe it's around West Lock. I'd have to, if you pull up the map, you can look at the NADC map for Alberta, and it'll show you where that boundary goes. But I believe it's just south of Whitecourt, and it kind of goes along. It covers Cold Lake, type of thing.
Do you have an idea of the percentage of the resource development or tax revenue?
Well, I can talk about Wonder Valley. That's Kevin O'Leary's AI data center, $70 billion. The total build out on that, if it gets to completion, will be $250 billion, because the $70 billion is just for the power generation and the infrastructure to support all the AI, the electronics and everything that goes in the building. So the vast majority of that is going to be in the buildings itself. So that in itself will be a wealth of knowledge. The amount of resource revenue coming out from south of here in the Montney, Duvernay, into the Greenview area, and even into my region, I can take you out, and within half a mile of my place, I've got Ovintiv, I've got CNRL, I've got Archer, I've got CNRL, I've got Ovintiv, all around me with multi-pad wells. So do I have the specific numbers? Actually, that's one thing the RMA, Rural Municipalities of Alberta, has been trying to get the information from the government to actually see what is the total resource revenue that's coming out and feeding the coffers for the province, so that we can help. It's another way of saying, look, this is what we're giving to the province. We need some investment back into our region around road infrastructure, hospitals. Pardon me?
Could it be on an MD by MD basis, the revenue?
It could be. Again, we're trying to, the province should have all that under the treasury and stuff, have those exact numbers and stuff. They would know that. Sometimes it is a challenge to get that information from them, but we know it's in the billions of dollars.
You have access to people in that executive, of the association executive?
We try to work with our MLA to get them to get the information for us, and actually Minister Horner is going to be here on Thursday, so I plan on having a discussion with him.
Can we give you some homework and see if you can get that information for us and submit it, or have someone submit it to us in due course?
If I can, yeah, we've been trying this for a year, so if I can get it, yes,
Okay.
I will,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, thank you. I've monopolized enough. Mr. Evans, any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, Susan?
Yes, and thank you for coming out. I have a real concern, the same as yours, that the northern ridings, more than just Grande Prairie, Wapiti, Central Peace, but also Lesser Slave, are really challenged. And I don't know if you know, but stop me if you know, we have another tool in the Act that outlines the boundary commission, the things we can do. That's what I was messing with my papers about. And it says that we can have up to 4 proposed electoral divisions that they share a boundary with the province, and their populations are extremely low. And so that's what we're faced right now with Central Peace, Notley, and Lesser Slave. Can you talk to me about that connection, that cross-trading, the importance of having every one of those MLAs in place? Like, is there don't let me put words in your mouth. How important is that to have all those ridings in place with MLAs?
I believe it's very important, otherwise I wouldn't be here. Again, Todd's riding, which is Central Peace Notley, that one, originally he's from Valley View area. I mean, when he first got elected as Wells Rose, this riding was split into 2. Half of the city was split into 2, and we had the Wapiti, and then I can't remember what they were called back then, but it got split into, Todd ended up with that long, because it covered Valley View, and then the city was primarily the city riding itself, and then some of that was broken out to cover into the Wapiti riding under Ron Reeve right now. So the closer those again, if I look at the city of Edmonton, you can be engaged with your people. You know what's going on in the community. You know exactly what the heartbeat is, what's going on in Edmonton and Calgary. When Todd has to go from Fox Creek to Valley View to Tulare and all those small communities, all the way up to Clear Hills County, it makes it a lot more challenging to know what, for that MLA, the workload on those MLAs becomes that more. Are you really having a proper representation? And I know you plan on going from 87 to 89. I'd like to see them in the north myself, but we don't need it around here. But I'm looking, again, Fort McMurray is another massive, the revenue stream that comes out of Fort McMurray. You're going to Slave Lake with what's coming out of the Nipissing. I used to live in Slave Lake. My sister still lives in Slave Lake. What's coming out of the Nipissing field there is another huge boon from a royalty stream to the province. And they've got, I think, three different sawmills and lumber facilities in that region as well. And there's a pulp mill there. So there's a lot of resource revenue that comes out, but we need the proper representation. If the MLAs are not familiar, if they're having a hard time to connect with the community because it's so broad, and it just makes it that much more challenging than it is. Like I said, when you can walk 15 minutes, you don't have to drive to your constituency office in the cities and stuff. It's just that we're very fortunate to be where we're at. Don't disagree, man. I'm very fortunate that we meet the criteria and stuff, and that we have the representation we do. I'm talking for the whole North because I truly believe that if we do this right, even though it may not fall within those guidelines, we're gonna benefit all of Alberta by having this set up properly so that we have proper representation.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Dr. Martin?
Thank you. And, yeah, just to set your mind at ease, you're correct on those numbers from way back. And, you know, that proportion didn't change for a long time, actually, and then it skyrocketed, obviously. You're not the first person to tell us, in the last 3 weeks about huge distances and how that negatively impacts effectiveness of representation, which obviously is the core purpose of this enterprise. You're not the first person to talk about the difficulties that the MLA is put to because of the huge distances. The logistical effort is mission critical and impacts the budget and all sorts of things in significant ways. Loads of MLAs have to talk to tons of councils. But here it's the distances. And I think you're quite right about the two great economic centers being here and at Fort McMurray. And we heard much the same story in Fort McMurray, incidentally, about the challenges of distance. I mean, they only have 2 roads in and out. And so you don't really have all that many more roads either. When you come down to it, you have to go past Fox Creek one way or another. I am interested, first off, in the fact that there is growth here in population and that people have come more than they've left, and to that you and all your colleagues are to be much credited for building communities where people wish to live. Both the EDs of immediate consequence here to this hearing, Grande Prairie itself and Grande Prairie Wapiti, are examples of resource-rich and active communities. So I'm glad for that. The numbers all bear out what what we would look at if we were plain lazy, and we're not, because we agree with you. I think, I know we agree with you that the population can't be the primary driver, and I think it was highly emphasized last time. But we take the act as a package. There's the legislators, in their wisdom, have said anything, including all these factors, is normal and healthy. So don't just run after a target. And so we've been pestering all our speakers on any number of topics that might seem obscure on a simple reading of the Act. So as far as our attentiveness to your anxiety, please rest assured that we are attentive too. The difficulty for us remains pretty clear. I mean, even if we accepted, I don't know what we would have to accept, but still we have to live within that actually quite generous vision that the legislation provides us. If we could give everybody more MLAs or double their travel budget, well, we can recommend it, but it's not.
The worst thing the province did was get rid of its airplanes. That's the worst thing they did.
Yeah, I mean, I was very shocked about the airplane. Yeah, it's shocking, and we can express shock and dismay, but we can't demand it in our report. I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Actually, if I may respond to some of what you said, you talked about some of the population, some of our region, we just did a census, both us and the city, so the city's sitting at just, I believe it's 70,000 now. So I know the county, we just did 121, we were at, I believe around 21,000, we're just under 27,000 now. We just finished it last year. So our age demographic is, I believe, in the low to mid 30s. I think ours is a little higher than the cities. I think the cities is in the kind of 32, 33. And don't quote me for these. I know it's in that range, but I can't remember the specifics on that. So we're a very young demographic. And I know within the legislation, you are bound by the act. You have to follow, you have guidelines to follow. So I will, again, challenge the board is within your report, looking at the challenges, that number hasn't changed around population. It was the same the last time, other than the numbers have changed itself, but the guidelines is a 25% within the mean average. So that's a statistical number, and they looked at that. But I think, I'm hoping we can convince you to see that if we continue down this path, the representation for the rural areas, especially if we continue with the population growth towards going into large urban centers, the representation is even going to be more and more challenging, and trying to meet those numbers is going to be just about impossible and still have effective representation. So I would hope that even within that report, you would make a recommendation that they look at this and have it changed, because I don't think it's relevant anymore. Going forward in the future, it's going to cause more issues than the way it's currently worded, especially around the population.
What should be changed?
Looking at that population number, just saying that, okay, it's got to be the average, there's this many people in the province, here's the average, there's this many ridings, 89 ridings, so it's divided out, this is now the average that should be in the ridings, plus or minus 25%, right? So
I don't want to leave you with any false hope.
no, but I'm saying because it's up to the government. It's up to the government to make that change, and I wish I had wanted after the last electoral boundary review to get in front of the government so that change could be made for them to look at it, because it's got to be made at the provincial legislative level. It's not at your level, but you can make that recommendation as to, I believe, that you can point out that there could be an issue going forward if you continue with this criteria that you're set to, that you have to look at.
I don't want you to leave with any false hopes. We cannot touch that minus 25 plus 25. We can make exceptions under section 15(2),
Yeah.
but that has a long, long history, and it's endorsed by the Supreme Court of Canada. So we can't really adjust those numbers. That's what I'm saying. You know, that gives us the flexibility.
And I'm not asking you to adjust the numbers. I'm asking you to make a recommendation to the legislative body that if we continue with the criteria that's set out here, the next time around, it's even going to be even more challenging to do that.
Can I just, say it in my own way so that we're on the same page?
Yes.
Is that as the population in the province increases, we know that it's going into Calgary, Edmonton, and, well, in this case, Airdrie too. So those numbers grow exponentially and make it impossible for the rural northern ridings.
Well, even some of the southern ridings.
Yeah, we see that in Drumheller. But that's the concept, is that the number this year, now this commission is dealing with a number of 55,000, plus or minus. But that number is only going to grow in 8 years when the commission meets again. And the challenge, instead of having 2 ridings that fall below the 25%, it could be 3. You know,
or even more.
Or more, because it's the nature of growth and the nature of how this is.
And the way the demographic population is going, it's changed over the last 100 years how it's more a technology society than it is a hands-on in the field working society.
But because it's a percentage, it grows.
But I look in the north, we're not growing as fast. I mean, we are in our area, and we will maybe be okay in the Grand Prairie area and maybe in the Wood Buffalo area.
Yep.
But as soon as you get up to Peace River to high level, I look at Minister Williams, he's got all the way from Peace River right to the Northwest Territories border. Hey, it's pretty challenging. And not that so again, the population isn't there and it's not growing that fast unless something, I'll double check that because, if you look at La Crete area, they're pumping out babies left, right and center, so.
We just
So-
talked about that. We were just told that
So
today.
maybe it won't change there,
But we have section 15(2), which is a special category.
but it's still limited as to what you can do there, right? And,
Well, there's a limit of 4, and
Yeah.
we've only used 2.
but my concern is if it continues this way, that 4 won't even come close to managing when you look at the full land. Like if we continue on that way, I think it needs to be looked at through a different lens.
Yeah.
I'm imploring you to at least make those recommendations that they look at that going forward.
Okay, sorry, sir,
No, not at all. I think it's important stuff. So, yeah, Mr. Marshall, thank you for coming. Good to see you again. I have a few questions. And I hear you absolutely. I mean, it's really striking just spending time here, right? And first off, I always love coming to Grand Prairie area. Like, it's part of the reason I think we've met a few times. It's always just good to kind of come up here. But I'm also struck by coming to Grand Prairie, having been in Peace River. Like, there's a big difference, right? Like, this is a city, proper
Yeah.
city, and it's sort of as a result, like you say, there's some growth here. But even then, the growth is still lagging the rest of the province a bit, right? And so I think you're right in terms of the trajectory over time, the other thing I agree with completely. The folks from other parts of the world and lots of people from other parts of the country. One fascinating stat I heard the other day is the city of Toronto itself is shrinking. There's actually fewer people there now than there were 5 or 10 years ago. And where are they coming? Alberta, right? Almost exclusively. And so you're right. Calgary tends to grow first and then gets a little priced out or houses not available. Edmonton, so we're seeing that in the population numbers. And I would argue Grand Prairie and area should be a magnet as well. Of opportunity to it. So, but just to give you a sense of the scale of what we're talking about, if we add together Central Peace, Notley, and Lesser Slave Lake constituencies, that's 56,000 some odd people. Calgary Northeast has 85,000 people. And this is the kind of juggling act we have, right? Is we have both as Justice Miller says, we have some legal parameters of what we have to stay within. But then we also have folks in other parts of the province saying, well, hey, wait a minute, that's not fair. I need representation too. But again, just to go full circle back to what you're saying, effective representation and the flexibility we have as a panel, and the Canadian construct is, it isn't just one person, one vote. If this was the U.S., too bad, so sad. That's just the way it is. We're just going to go 89 divided by 4.8 million, and that's it. And regardless of what that does geographically, fortunately, we don't have to do that. So we do have some flexibility, I guess, is probably what I wanted to kind of make sure we're clear on. So with that, I'm interested in the 2 Grand Prairie constituencies. Because last time I think it was Grand Prairie Smoky, Grand Prairie Wapiti, if I'm not mistaken, right? And they were split, the city of Grand Prairie split in half, and
It was
so
one
half
east
city,
and one west.
one east, one west.
Yeah.
And this time, we now have one fully urban Grand Prairie, and then one partial Grand Prairie and rural surround. How does that work? And how's it working for you? And does it?
Well, we actually, between the municipalities, between us, the city, and the MD of Greenview, we've got a partnership around economic development. We call it Invest Northwest. We work very well together. One of the things we've noticed when we've gone down to Sierra Week and other large conventions and stuff is most of those players want to see that municipalities are working together. They don't want to go into where there's a war. It's not good investment practice.
Mm-hmm.
So same as our MLAs are working well with us. We work together with those 2 MLAs because they recognize that the region, we're stronger as a region when especially if we have to go to the provincial government. I also sit, and I'm the chair of the Water North Coalition. So this is all of the NADC area for all of Northern Alberta. and it's around our water, wastewater operators and anything to do with water, wastewater. Again, we're 10% of the population, so when you have a small community going to the province, are they gonna listen to you? Versus the part of that reason we created this coalition was, let's have a unified voice from the north to go to the province to talk about what our issues are around water, wastewater, whether it's operators, succession planning, getting resources, water for life, AMWIP, capital investment and stuff. So we recognize that we are stronger working together as a region and promoting what we have here than we are if we're going off one-on-one. And I believe our MLAs, from what I've seen, are on board with us and they recognize that. And that's one of our strengths, why we've got what we have, is because of that unified front and working together for the benefit of our people up here.
I've certainly had a bit of experience on that regional economic development piece, and I agree with you 100%. There's a lot of horror stories where potential companies come and they find that there's infighting and they just want nothing to do with it. So I agree with you completely, and I kudos for doing that, because I think that's the way to go. Where you do have maybe differences of just emphasis or focus, and you've got one MLA that's working on Grande Prairie sort of city issues, and then one MLA that's working on those city and rural issues. Does that work? How's that working? Is that working okay, where you've got MLA Dick, who's Grande Prairie, and MLA Weeb, who's Grande Prairie Wapiti? I know it sounds like they work pretty well together and with the different municipalities, but is that effective when you've got one that focuses just on the city?
Here's, because we're working as a unit, we've come up, this is our number one priority for the region, and we push that number one priority. We have a unified, we're all speaking from the same song sheet. So it's not the city's doing their thing. We may, when it gets to some other smaller stuff, but when it comes to the larger, Highway 40X to get a connector around the city, so we get all that heavy traffic out of the city coming up from the south. Everything, all the dangerous goods has to go straight through the city. We're the only city in the province that happens in. So that's our number one priority for all municipalities and our MLAs. Mascot Medical Center, electrical distribution, another thing we're working with Minister Neudorf on, because if you look at our area, we've lost businesses, and we've, one of our councillors, his brother has had a nitrogen plant in Claremont. He shut it down because it's cheaper to ship it in from BC. We've lost the Alberta advantage in the north from a power distribution. We're paying just about 3 times distribution costs than what we are in Edmonton and Calgary and southern Alberta. So it makes a huge difference when you're trying to get these large players up here from a business standpoint. So we're all singing from the same song sheet. So it's not the city's doing their thing and the MLA Dick is supporting them. We're all together and we're supporting the same aspect to move forward.
Okay. Thank you.
So the other thing too, from an economic development standpoint, the city, we're 100,000 here, but if you look at the retail resources they have here with the Costco, the Walmart and all the other stores, yeah, we don't have as many as the cities do at Edmonton and Calgary, like they'll have 4 or 5, but we have pretty much everything that the larger centers do. And we service an area, the city services an area of about 300 to 350,000 people. When you look at BC, because on Friday, you'll watch the BC plates coming in from Dawson and Port St. John. Sunday, they're all going back home, and then even north and stuff. So the area that we service from an economic, from a retail servicing standpoint is huge as well.
One more question, if Judge will indulge. So looking to the east end, you'd mentioned Minister Lowen's constituency of Central Peace Notley. One of our sort of challenges there, and as the Justice mentioned, we can go plus or minus 50% on some of those, and Central Peace Notley is one of them, but it's right close to that line. If we needed to borrow, if you will, parts of another constituency, perhaps Grande Prairie Wapiti or somewhere else, are there kind of natural spots there, if I look along Highway, what was that, 43, like say, or elsewhere, that if we needed to add a little bit into Central Peace Notley?
So currently they're using the Smoky River as the west boundary.
Looks like, yeah, exactly. So a little bit of the west of that, does it make any sense at all for any of those communities or that part of the province to kind of cut into Central Peace Notley? Or any other thoughts on that entire constituency? I know it's a fairly big one. If we need to expand that a bit to bump up that population, do you have any idea a suggestion how we might want to look at doing that?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you come west, you're gonna chip into the county. But again, Todd is another one that we work quite closely with as well. So most of our MLAs, we have a pretty good working relationship. So I mean, if it did move across, if that boundary got changed a bit, I mean, to keep Todd viable, I don't think people would have a problem with it. I don't. I'm only going to speak for myself.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to get.
Yeah, no, it's a tough question, and I, but I think, and the big message I'm hearing from you, and make sure I've got this right though, is that folks up north and in this region work closely together, and so we draw lines on a map. We've got counties, we've got cities, we've got constituencies, we've got reserves. There's lots of different.
Because even Martin Long cuts into MDA Greenview. He's
Yeah.
on the southern part of MDA Greenview.
Yeah.
And we got Rowan on the northern side. So I mean,
Yeah.
even that municipality, it's a large municipality, mind you, but it's cut into sections as well. So, I mean, if it got moved, so be it. If it makes sense to do that.
Okay.
Then I don't see a problem. Then we've got 3 MLAs.
There you
that
go.
we can hammer on.
All right, that's good. That's really helpful. Thank you so much.
Mr. Marshall, you touched on, part of the really neat part of this exercise that we're on as a commission is we deal with really touch on the philosophical basis of what a democratic system looks like. And you touched on that a little bit, the rule of minus 25 plus 25, okay? I mean, and when you bear down to it, how do we run ourselves as democracies? So that's the neat little philosophical, if you like it, and then I think you touched on that a little bit, but then we've got to get intensely practical. Like, where do the lines go? And how does it impact, members of the legislature? How does it impact the voters? And what type of voters it impacts? So now we're on the tail end of our public hearing across the province, and I was struck by the distaste for anything suggesting a hybrid or a blended riding in some of the places we visited. They did not want to be mixing rural and urban people at all. And by the look on your face, you betray your thought process that, how can you not get along that way, right? Is that what
you're shooting yourself in the foot if you can't get along with your neighbors. You know what, the only
Well,
one...
I mean, in fairness, it's, bigger cities, and they don't think they have common interests with maybe people on the fringes of their municipality.
But who I would challenge, who is looking at that, is it your municipal leaders? Because that's one thing we had to get out of ourselves, is our constituents don't care where the municipal boundaries are, no different than where those boundaries are. All the people on the ground want is you to do your job as a municipal leader or even a provincial leader and provide them the services and the quality of life and look after them. And they don't give a rat's patootie about where the boundaries are. And for those communities that are looking at that, I would say it's only the municipal leaders that know where those boundaries are. I know where the boundaries are, but 90% of the people don't. And I didn't know where the boundaries were until I got into politics.
Yeah. In response to the issue of whether blended or hybrid ridings are helpful or effective, you would probably vote yes for them, right?
Well, we had it before. I mean, because the city was split into 2.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the
Let me-
city may have a different perspective in the past because the city and the county were like this in the past. We are not like that anymore.
But I'm struck by the fact that no one from the city government was there.
Yeah, I was surprised because we just actually Aquaterra, our water utility, we just had the AGM and the meeting there. So I just left the mayor and the other mayors. So,
Yeah, but Grand Prairie's not unique. Province-wide, we've not had a lot of representatives from, not a lot of municipal government. But let me throw one other thing to you. As we look at how previous electoral boundaries commissions have looked at solving the challenge, especially historically, it's always been rural, urban, rural, urban, rural, urban, and urban means Calgary and Edmonton. And we have those two different terms. I'm struck by the fact that that is the wrong terminology, and that rural and urban do not constitute urban being Calgary and Edmonton and rural everything else. We have now got a province that probably needs 4 descriptors at least, and more regional focused and looking at effective representation. We saw that a little bit in the south, and we're certainly seeing it up north. So I guess I'm throwing that out. Would you agree with me on that?
on looking at things differently?
With at least 4 different terms instead of just 2, rural and urban.
So help me understand what your 4 terms would be. So help me understand where I am open to it personally.
Well, I guess maybe the 3, the Calgary and Edmonton and hybrid.
And hybrid and
rural.
And rural.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with it.
Okay.
Again, if you look at what people want on the ground, it's mainly people in my position or in your position that would understand what those boundaries are. Most people don't.
Yeah.
I do have some people thinking, and that was part of the problem in the past, where the city and the county were like this, the city wants this, and there was that, and there's still some of that.
Yeah.
But it's the leaders at the top that are starting to change that, because the leaders were part of the problem in the past. So if we change it at our level, then we can drive that change and show the people that it's better to be a unified front than it is to go at each other. It's not constructive, and it's not conducive to anything good.
Okay. Anything arising from that? Well, thank you very much, Mr. Marshall, thank you for your written submission as well. And it's obvious that you thought about this for some time, processed it, and you have flown the flag for this region very well. And aside from my comment that we ain't gonna touch, or we're not even gonna recommend a change of the -25 and +25, we will take your comments into consideration.
So which ministry does this fall under?
This is we're actually under the Speaker of the Legislature.
So it's under, so it's Mr. McIver now, okay.
Yeah, and
I know Rick quite well.
We will submit the report, and then, as I maybe didn't say so clearly, but when the final report gets submitted, it's up to the government to take our recommendations and implement them, tweak them, change them, or establish the boundaries.
So, and I understand the criteria you're under. I'm just, at my level, I need to speak to our representatives and see if they can't start pushing that to look at things differently. And I know there's probably larger, it gets to the federal level and stuff, but I really think that for the benefit in the long term, we need to start looking at things and be prepared for what is coming our way and looking ahead versus not being prepared.
But please consider doing that homework for us and getting resource numbers to us if you could.
I will see what I can find out for you guys, and I will send it to Susan, because I have her card.
Good. Okay, we will, pardon? We will adjourn this evening's public hearing. Thank you for presenting again, Mr. Marshall, and okay. Thank you. We'll adjourn.